All right. The Sustainability Coalition is a network of nearly 400 partner organizations, including the City of Corvallis, Benton County, OSU, Corvallis School District. As you can see, a lot of businesses and nonprofits, faith communities, schools, and government entities. And we also have hundreds of volunteers, many of whom serve on our 12 action teams. And one of those action teams is focused on energy. 3 years ago, our Energy Action Team launched an initiative called Shift Together, which is a collaborative effort with one of our key partner organizations, Seeds for the Soul. The Shift Together campaign is designed to help everyone in our community make the shift from fossil fuel-based energy to energy efficiency and renewables. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from several of our Energy Action Team members who have been instrumental in helping our community shift together. And here's our agenda for the evening. We'll begin by hearing a presentation by Dan Orzech, followed by just a brief update by Cassandra Robertson. And then we'll open the floor to your questions, both written and oral, to 4 panelists. And we will close the evening by giving you a chance to chat informally with our panelists and with other members of our Shift Together team. So, at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Dan Orzech, who is the founder and general manager of the Oregon Clean Power Cooperative, which enables community members, businesses, and local organizations to invest in large-scale solar projects at facilities such as schools, nonprofits, faith communities, and businesses. Dan has developed more than 40 co-op solar projects around the state of Oregon, including many right here in Corvallis. Please welcome Dan to the podium.
Okay. New AV system, so wish us luck. Good evening. How's that? Can you hear me?
No.
Well, that would be unusual. Usually I'm talking too loud. How's that?
That's good.
All right. We'll see how this does. I have a hard time with the lights. So thank you all for coming out. It's great to see so many people here to hear about natural disasters. It's not like we don't have enough bad news, so I appreciate your coming. So we live in a beautiful part of the country, and statistically, it's actually a pretty safe part of the country. If you're older than, if you were born before 1980, you may recognize this because after May 1980, Mount St. Helens looked like this. So we are statistically safe in this part of the country, but we do have our challenges. Point it over here. Oh, there we go. Ice storms being one of them. And of course, the one we're all really concerned about or should be concerned about is the big one, right? The Cascadia event. So the geologists tell us that over the last 10,000 years, every 300 years on average, there's been a major earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. The last one was here, so that makes us 26 and a half years overdue. You laugh, but if the earthquake happens, it's not going to be a laughing matter, right? This is what the FEMA folks say is going to happen in Oregon. And here's the details. We're going to have 1 million displaced people. So this is not an if, right? We know it's going to happen. If it doesn't happen in our lifetime, it's going to happen in our kids' lifetime. What does it look like to have, and what it doesn't say here is that the power is going to be out. How long? No one knows. 6 months, 12 months? It's going to be worse on the coast. It's going to be worse in Lakeview. They may never get their power back on. Portland will probably come first. So what does that look like if the power goes out for a large area of the country? Well, we happen to know because this is the country's largest power outage a number of years back. It started here in Ohio where a tree branch hit a power line and it cascaded across, I think, 9 states and 3 Canadian provinces. What happened was there was a software bug in the utility control systems that meant that the operators couldn't see the outage coming to them. So there were, I forget how many, tens of millions of people in the dark. So this is what Oregon's going to look like after the earthquake from the air. And what's it going to look like on the ground? Well, we have a clue. This is Hurricane Sandy in New York. Now, think about this. There's a hurricane going on outside, right? And they are evacuating people. You're a patient in the hospital and you're being carried out in the middle of a hurricane. Why? Because all of the hospitals in the lower half of Manhattan were either out of power or their generators failed or they were flooded. The only one that wasn't had 3 times the number of people who showed up to the ER and then left. So think about that for a second. There's a hurricane, right, going on. You leave your apartment or your house, you go to the hospital. You're not doing that because you stubbed your toe, right? And then you leave without being seen because the hospital was simply overwhelmed. There's another example of what happens during a hurricane. This was in Texas. So here's a chemical plant. They had 50 inches of rain within, I think, 24 hours. The grid went out, not surprisingly. This chemical plant's backup generators flooded and went out. And so this is what they had. We had something almost happen like this in Southern California a couple of weeks ago. Probably read about it in the news. Now, they had to evacuate the area, and the first responders, a lot of them ended up in the hospital with respiratory issues. But what's really interesting about this picture? Look to the right of that column of smoke. What do you see? A shadow. So the sun was shining. The grid was out, the generators were down, but the sun was shining. One more outage. So no one knows what caused this one. I suspect it was probably the Russians. But here's what's interesting. So this is the downtown LA 911 dispatch center, right? But don't worry, that's out because they have a backup center in the San Fernando Valley. Well, does that ring a bell to anyone? Like the Northridge earthquake, San Fernando earthquake, which had the highest acceleration of an earthquake ever recorded in North America. I don't know how many people died, but all right. So let's talk about the cost of these power outages. So this is Work Unlimited. It's a very small nonprofit in the Salem area, and they take care of adults with various disabilities. I don't know how many people they have. They have 2 houses. They probably have about 20, 25 residents. And if you remember, a couple of years ago, there was an ice storm that lasted 10 days, right? We weren't hit so bad, but Salem and Portland were hit bad. They were out of power for 10 days. So think about that. These folks, some of them, they have medical equipment that needs power. They have to take care of them. So what do? They have to pack them up and take them to a hotel. So let's do the math. You have 20 residents, 30 residents, hotels, I don't know, maybe you find a cheap one for $100 a night. Of course, everyone else in Salem is looking for a hotel. And of course, you can't just take them to a hotel and drop them there. You have to bring your staff with them. So that's another 10 or 20 people, right? So you're a couple of $2,000, $3,000 a night times 10 nights. That'll put a small nonprofit out of business, right? They can't handle a sudden, unexpected expense like that. So extrapolate that to the country as a whole. And power outages are becoming more common. The grid is going down more often. Now, partly due to climate change and weather. So this is Oak Ridge National Laboratory research, and the latest year that they have statistics on, $121 billion. That's the cost of the grid going down to the country. So presumably it's more now. All right. One more thing. So what about generators? Like, just go out and get a generator, right? Well, people are probably surprised to hear me say generators can be valuable. I actually recommend generators if you're looking for resiliency as part of a larger picture. But every power source has its challenges, has its pros and cons. And generators is fuel, right? So this is Hurricane Sandy, again, on the East Coast. And, you know, the people with generator were all smug, right? Because their refrigerators were cold and their air conditioning was on during Hurricane Sandy for the first 3 days. But then they were out of gas. And then they were out on the street like everyone else looking for gasoline. The gas stations can only pump if there's electricity. So, right? Okay, Oregon. Anyone know where this is? That's right. This is where 90% of our liquid fuels, right? There's no gasoline or liquid fuels refined in Oregon. It's all imported. And this is where it's stored, on the banks of the Willamette in Portland. And what did this look like a few years ago or 100 years ago? It looked like this. It was a lake, and it was filled in. And so what's going to happen during an earthquake is, the geologists call it liquefaction, right? The sandy soil that all these tanks are built on is going to shake. These things, most of which were built before the 1960s, when structural rules, laws came into place, they're going to collapse. All that fuel is going to flow into the Willamette and down the Columbia and out past Astoria into the ocean. So we're not only going to be in the dark, we're not going to be going anywhere. Okay, so you've been very patient hearing all this bad news. Let's talk about good news for a little bit. What's the good news in this picture? Some of you may remember almost a decade ago, if you lived in Southtown, that substation on 3rd Street on the left as you're going south, right? Just past the co-op. That went out. And Pacific Power brought in a temporary substation, which also then went out. And so that area, including the South Co-op, was out of power, was in the dark for the better part of a week. So what happened at the co-op? Well, you know, their freezers and their refrigerators warmed up, and they had to throw out $30,000 worth of food. So where's the good news? The good news is that we helped the co-op, both the North and South stores, 3 years ago, put in solar and batteries. The batteries went in at the South store. And Mark Tarasawa, the co-op manager now, sent me an email about 2 months ago saying they had another power outage. And what happened? The solar and the batteries kept everything running. Now, that power outage was only a day or so, day and a half, I think. But they did not go down. The store was open. The refrigerators and freezers were operating. So what is this? This is what's called a microgrid, and that's what I'm going to tell you about now. Annette, how am I doing on time?
You're fine.
Okay. So what's a microgrid? Well, it's a little vague, the description, but basically a microgrid is, if you think about the electric grid, right, it's a small version of that. And what's that island doing up there in the corner? The important thing is it's a part of the grid that can be islanded, that's the technical utility term, or cut off, separated from the rest of the grid. So when the larger utility grid goes down, this subsection can keep operating. So there's various levels, if you will, basically sizes. Level 1 is simply one building, and level 3 is, you know, a campus, if you will, perhaps multiple campuses all connected. So let me show you some examples. We've, as Annette mentioned, we've been doing this for more than a decade now. And so here's some that we did. This is the fire station for Talent in Phoenix in Southern Oregon on Highway 99. This is 75 kilowatts of solar power. And if you turn around and look at the side of the building, you can see the tall thing there. That's the battery. Here's another one at the coast. We did this for a small school district there. Same thing, solar panels, a battery. And this is a larger one at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. This is actually their production building where they build the sets, keep their costumes now. So these are not quite a complete list of the projects we've done, and the ones in red are the ones that are level 1 microgrids that have batteries and solar as well. Of course, we're not the only folks doing this. So this is, let me show you some other ones. This is the City of Beaverton Police Public Safety Building. This is the National Guard building in Dallas, north of us. And you can see, you can have multiple sources of power, right? So you could have fuel cells, not that common, but so this is where it might make sense to have a generator, because a generator delivers a lot of power for a short period of time until it runs out of fuel. And then the solar and the batteries can kick in, and as long as the sun keeps coming up, that'll recharge and you can keep going essentially indefinitely. This is the fire station in Portland. All right, so all the ones I showed you are all for one building owned by that building owner, but it doesn't have to be like that. So this is a level 3 microgrid, right? A more complicated one that's owned by, I shouldn't say owned by PGE. It's on the south side of Salem. They call it the Smart Energy Center, PGE Smart Energy Center. And the solar is not owned by PGE. It's on the roof of Kettle Potato Chips. I think they may have sold that building, I'm not sure, but when it was built, the solar was owned by Kettle Potato Chips. This is the heart of the microgrid. This is 5 megawatts of essentially laptop batteries in a very nondescript brick building in the south side of Salem. And the whole thing looks like this. So you got the battery building in the lower left, you got solar on the Kettle Potato Chips over there, and you've also got a bunch of generators which are not owned by PGE, right? So there's the National Guard building there, number 3, and various other, I think mostly government buildings. So this is a, you know, a more complicated level 3 microgrid. And the beautiful part of this is the whole area here, if the larger grid goes down, the PGE grid goes down, this disconnects at islands and it stays up. So they still have power when the grid goes down. Here's another example like that. This is owned by San Diego Gas and Electric, and it's in this tiny town in the desert, which is served by one power line running out from San Diego that's 60 miles long. So there's nothing else going out there, just this one town. And the power line, you know, goes down regularly. So they could have spent millions, tens of millions of dollars upgrading that power line. But instead, what they did was they put the generation out there in the desert in Borrego Springs. Another example, this may be the most important town in America. So Babcock Ranch in Florida is America's first all-solar town, and this is what it looks like. And what's important here is that 4 years ago, I think, Florida was hit by, which hurricane was it? Ian, maybe? I can't keep them straight. And 4 million customers of Florida Power and Light were in the dark. The grid went down, they had no power. The people living here didn't notice a thing. Their power never went down. So it's possible. All right, let's talk about another type of microgrid, one that is off the grid, right? So I don't know if you've visited Alcatraz, but there are no power lines running under San Francisco Bay to provide power. It's all powered by diesel, which is brought in by boats and generators. And so what they did was they put solar and batteries there, and they cut the amount of diesel that they had to haul in by boat by, I think, 60%. All right, last thing. You may be asking yourselves, I hope you're asking yourselves, what can I do? Well, you can do something. So as Annette mentioned, and we probably have some members in this room who've invested in our other projects. This is a project we're doing for the food bank in Silverton. Great organization. They serve a lot of people. And just like the South Co-op, you know, they have refrigeration and cold storage that's going to go down if the power goes out. So we went to them and we are helping them get a microgrid, a single building microgrid. So we're going to put up solar and batteries, and actually that guy who ran away from the table, where is he? Peter Greenberg is the one who's going to install that system. So what can you do? Well, we need financing for this. So we have a foundation that's going to put up most of it, but we're going to raise from the community, we're going to raise $75,000 in investment. Many of you probably know how that works. Minimum investment's $1,000. We pay you back over 10 years, and we use that money to put up solar projects like this. So I'm going to end on that note. And how'd I do on time?
Very well.
Usually I run long.
And Dan will be back up here with 3 additional panelists in just a few moments. So we're going to give people a chance to ask questions either orally when we get to that point or in writing. So if you think you would prefer to write down a question, Julie and Susan have 3x5 cards if you want to raise your hand and get a question card. All right. So next, I want to introduce Cassandra Robertson, and Cassandra's just going to give us a really quick update. Cassandra owns Abundant Solar, a local business that has been serving Corvallis and surrounding communities since 2005, and I'll bet there are several people in the audience who had Abundant Solar put panels on their roof. Over the last 20 years, Abundant Solar has installed more than 6.5 megawatts of solar power. So welcome, Cassandra.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to share a little bit. Yeah, in 20 years, we've kind of built out that much power over time on small single family units or a couple of commercials here and there. And what I really want to say to start is just the long-term investment of this and how we are creating a more resilient community just step by step. I really appreciate these big projects, and it's coupled with all of our individual projects. We're starting to install a lot more battery systems. So we do have a lot of microgrids. But what I want to say is community, because everything Dan just said is like, oh my gosh, if there's a big earthquake, if your house doesn't survive, your solar panels aren't going to, and your batteries aren't either. So it's like this, to me, everyone in this room, everyone connected to the coalition, this is what we're really putting our resiliency into, is that we are in a town that has this kind of response tonight on a Tuesday night in the first of summer. So I just want to reflect that back, that this, to me, is what resiliency is building community with each other. And in the meantime, doing the infrastructure. So we're going to, I brought my lead installer, operation manager, Ryan Cheshire, who's really has a lot of good information about solar and battery installation, so we can ask a lot of questions and he'll be able to share that information. But for our company, we've been here for 21 years. I'm really proud, and I'm really proud that we've been able to keep it going. Those of you that knew my beautiful husband, James Reese Miller, we've kept the business going, and that just really is a testament to our community, to the team at Abundant Solar, and to the mission of installing solar, one household at a time, really getting this resilience that's all over our community and not just in one place or out in one field. So I just think all of it together is so important, and I just appreciate you all coming out tonight. And also to anybody who does have an Abundant Solar system, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting our company, and thank you for supporting us over the last few years as we've transitioned into me being the owner and all that's come with. So yeah, thank you. Is there anything else you want to hear? No, that's good.
So now I'm going to ask Dan, Cassandra, Ryan, who is also with Abundant Solar, and Peter Greenberg, who is with Energy Wise Services, to come up here. And I, as always, have some Q&A guidelines. Those of you who have attended any of our programs before know that we want you to ask lots of questions. Hope you came with questions, but please ask a question rather than making a statement. Be brief if you can, so we can hear from as many people as possible. And then speak up so everyone can hear your question. And Dan, the microphone's right in front of you, and click on it until the little green light comes on. All right. So we can alternate between oral questions and written questions. And Carol Cena, I see you put your name up. So just speak up so everybody can hear you.
I have 10 16-year-old PV panels on my roof that still work fine as far as I can tell. What would it cost me to add batteries to that system so that I would have electricity when the grid goes out?
What color house do you have? Depends on how big a battery you want.
Bookend it for me. Between,
You want me to answer that, or you want to?
So I would say that a typical whole home battery system,
Ryan, if you could put it right, you almost have to eat the microphone for people to hear.
a typical whole home battery system would usually start anywhere between $12,000 and $15,000 and upward. And that's with retrofitting the existing solar system.
12 or 15,000, Jesus.
Basically, your solar panels are fine for a battery system, but typically you need a different inverter. There's a hybrid inverter that works with batteries and a grid following inverter, which was that doesn't work with batteries. You can have an AC coupled system, which really doesn't use your solar system, or a DC coupled one. But the important thing with batteries is you want to determine what you want to operate with them, how long you want to operate them, and then plan on the worst. Figure the power's going to go out in the middle of the winter in a big ice storm, and you're not going to have power for a week. And I just have a couple little things here. This is a kilowatt meter, and I know the library here used to lend them out. Maybe they still do, but you just plug it into a wall, plug your refrigerator in, and then it'll record how much energy it uses, over a day, a week, so you could actually see what all your 120 volt devices use. And then this is just a portable battery. They come in all different sizes. Basically there's automatic systems, manual systems, plugging into an electric vehicle, a whole series of things you could do. You could buy a half kilowatt hour portable battery, a 5 kilowatt hour portable battery. And there's even a new, kind of new, I guess, basically 25 years ago, any desktop computer, you had a uninterruptible power supply system, a UPS system. And the portable battery people, some of them are catching on and making this so you could just plug it into an outlet to keep it charged. Your power goes off, automatically powers your refrigerator. So, there's different levels of what you want, but you really want to determine what you want to operate, how much energy they use, and then for how long, and then how much money do you want to spend?
So if I could just ask a follow-up question to Carol's question, are there any funding incentives? Are there any, state agencies, Energy Trust of Oregon, Oregon Department of Energy that provide assistance for buying a new battery, to support your solar?
Yes, so anyone who's has Pacific Power, there is incentives upwards of $6,100 right now to get battery and solar, $3,500 for $3,100 for $3,400, 36, yeah, for batteries, and $2,500 for solar, and that'll be around for at least another 3 months. And then might tier down. So that's for Pacific Power. Consumers Power does not have any incentives. There's no longer federal tax credits, and that's what we're working with right now.
Energy Trust.
And that's through Energy Trust of Oregon, yeah, Pacific Power customers.
Great.
And PGE.
Okay. Do we have any written questions?
Oh, hang on. There was a state program that was open for one day. It didn't have much money. I got 10% of the program. Well, I got about 100 grand. It's about $1 million.
You had to jump on it really fast, didn't you? You had to be right there at your computer when they
I
said,
think it was just, there was
"Okay,
so
now."
little money that people didn't bother. But you know, and I doubt that that'll come back. We had it a couple years ago. We begged the legislature for money. Nothing happened. And it, you know, with everything Trump's doing, I doubt they're going to put money into it, but who knows?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what makes more sense, putting in batteries when you put in solar or adding them later? And I'm gonna let the experts in the residential stuff answer that question.
I mean,
Well,
I'll
what are the
just
pros
stop.
and cons of? Okay.
I will just start with one of the things to think about is what kind of money you have to spend. I mean, that's a very real thing to be thinking about. And then what are your goals? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to get off the grid and just produce power, or are you concerned about resiliency? So it's really looking at what you've got to work with, because it is a substantial cost either way, whether you do it later or before. At least what we're seeing and installing now is exciting because it's something that batteries can be added. So we do have customers who are coming to us. We're getting solar up, we're getting the inverter, proper inverter, that then batteries can just be added at a later time when they have some funding for that. So that's one of the first questions is really what do you have to spend, because it is more. And long ago, people were putting in inverters, and those inverters, we do have to get a new inverter and couple those. So it is a little more cost to add on to old systems. But right now, you know, if you get something now, in a few years, you can get batteries added to that. And it's just the cost of the batteries, not a full inverter and batteries, if that makes sense.
And adding to that, it is really important in the design process to essentially future-proof these systems. And this is a lot easier these days than it was. I'm sorry about that. So the important aspect in these systems is future-proofing for them. And whether you put in solar first, with batteries or without, a lot of the equipment these days that is available is retrofittable. But it's just important to plan for that appropriately, because it can be a costly endeavor down the road. So knowing your goals from the get-go is the most important step.
How much solar capacity do you need on a house, say, to make it viable to have to feed that into batteries?
There's really no set maximum or set minimum per se. The number one step is knowing what your demand is and taking into account the available roof space, shading, and budgets. But, you know, usually a small system with a modest battery is better than nothing at all.
And the price of the inverters, solar panels make DC, inverters changes to AC, has come down a lot over the years. And there's really not that much difference in a 3.8 kilowatt inverter and a 11 kilowatt inverter. So, you know, a lot of times we'll put in a bigger inverter if there's more roof space, you know, just so people can expand down the road. And there's even inverters that all of us put in that it's one inverter that could do multiple ranges.
All right, Peter, speak up so people can hear your question.
Maybe Dan or somebody could speak to this. Tell us about the new plug-in solars, that panels that apparently are they available? These are panels that you can just buy or order and supposedly plug them into your outdoor inlet and it sends electricity into your house. But
New plug-in solar, Who wants to? What did
Yeah.
you call it?
So, and also called balcony solar,
Balcony
so
solar,
plug-in
okay.
solar. So these are small systems that you can hang on your balcony, right? They're not necessarily attached to your house, and you can plug directly into your wall socket and offset some of your load. So the question is, are they available? And the answer is yes, if you're in Europe. Like a lot of things, Europe is ahead of us. So it's coming. The place that's furthest ahead in the U.S. is Utah. They passed a law allowing this a couple of years ago. There are supposedly some technical considerations having to do with the plug, the connection, right? They, make sense. They want that. The fire code safety people want that to be safe. They don't want anyone to get their hand in there and get shocked. I can't speak to that, whether that's legitimate or not, but I can tell you that Oregon had a bill in the legislature that died that would have allowed this, and there's probably a half a dozen or a dozen other states that have similar bills. So it's coming. Whether it's a year or two, I don't know, but it is definitely coming. Yeah, and there's like 1 million systems installed in Europe, I think, or 2 million. They're all over the place.
So this would be useful to renters.
It would be useful to renters, absolutely. Yep.
I think California just passed it, so it's coming.
Yeah.
So anybody else on the panel want to speak to that? I mean, I have a question is like, how many kilowatt, what size are those systems? I mean,
Typically small, 500 watts or,
Yeah.
2 panels with a little microinverter that changes AC, plug it into an outlet and,
big enough to power what? Maybe a small refrigerator or something? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, probably some lights, maybe a small refrigerator, cell phone, right? Yeah, it's not going to run your furnace or your AC.
Yeah, okay. Mary?
I came here, my daughter lives in the northeast side of town and she holds down a household there. I'm in the northwest side and I no longer own my home. And I have been working with neighborhood association folks in our city to see what's possible, especially when I look at people who are renters or those who may not even have homes, and how solar can be a backup for those in need when the need
Yeah.
is here in our area.
So
Would love some
feedback on, yeah.
renters and those that are not able to afford to purchase
Okay.
systems.
Yeah, well, there is a solution called community solar, which is designed to address that, which is putting up a large solar system somewhere else, and then you're not physically connected to it, but you can get the credits for the power, essentially. That, of course, there's no physical connection to your home or business, and so there's no resiliency aspect. You can't put a battery on that. But you can participate in solar. And of course, you can also participate through projects like the one I put up there with the food bank in Silverton through us.
Seeds for the soul.
basically.
And Seeds for the Soul. Thank you. Yeah. So people familiar with Seeds for the Soul? That's a wonderful organization based here in town.
All right. Ken?
The Seeds for the Soul also cover rentals for landlords,
Does Seeds for the Soul cover rentals
to landlords?
to landlords? Julie, you got to come up here. Julie Williams is the founder of Seeds for the Soul, the mastermind behind it. So here she is.
Social deviant. Hi. Seeds for the Soul right now is doing mostly energy efficiency things. And I do want to say about the plug-in balcony solar, I think for a lot of people, thanks, it's more beneficial to put in a heat pump water heater and do energy efficiency first. And for renters, that's tough. And I think that's city ordinance and state legislation to make sure that landlords are installing the most efficient things for their renters. Balcony solar, I think it's a distraction actually for lower income people who are renting. Because, I mean, for the resiliency part to charge something, but I doubt it would run a refrigerator, a standard refrigerator. So I'd rather see people putting pressure on their landlord to make the rentals a lot more efficient than they are. But for your question, we cannot do landlords with solar and batteries. As far as Energy Trust doesn't offer that for landlords. But we can do all the other home efficiencies. So we can get no cost insulation, no cost heat pump water heaters, no cost HVAC for your client based on their lower income. So there are some avenues.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I hope you heard that. No cost. That's for income qualified folks. That's what's so amazing about Seats for the Soul is the financing system that Julie has worked out enables them to help people get much more, have their homes be a lot more efficient without paying upfront costs, which is great. Patricia.
I have two questions. One is those incentives for the batteries, do they apply to replacement batteries? Because our 16-year-old battery is dying.
Oh, do the incentives apply for replacement batteries?
For 5 years, so it should be fine.
Probably.
Probably.
Probably. I think so. Just a comment on the apartments. I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, we put in 100 solar systems on an apartment, 2 apartment complexes, 3 in Portland. But it was an old program. Logistically, it was very strange. We basically own all the systems or the meters in our name, but it's very difficult to do. And a lot of times it doesn't really benefit a low income person because if they're getting subsidized housing, it's based on how much they're earning, how much they're paying for rent. If they're getting free electricity, then the rent could be higher. So it's not easy.
My other question has to do with camping type solar systems. Can they be used as a backup in a household situation? Because I know several people who, live out of, camping trailers and have portable panels and batteries.
No, it's illegal.
Yeah, sure.
It's illegal, but is what you're saying.
You can, but it involves extension cords at minimum, or what we call generator interlocks, where you, instead of having like a combustion like generator, you would plug in this power source, this portable power station, and it is possible. But where the complexity comes in is the electrical systems and what needs to be done to integrate that.
I actually want to add about resiliency. Are those portable battery systems, just like this little one here? We're using one right now when we go to a customer and we turn off the power for the day to upgrade everything. We just take this little battery and we're plugging in a refrigerator or a freezer. You have to recharge that. But it is something that I do feel like if you have $800, $600 that you can spend on something, that does give you some resiliency. And then if you have if it's just for the day that the power goes down, then you can have that always charged and always ready. And it also is portable, so you could actually take it somewhere. And I want to say publicly, because I have been talking to the city, I haven't for a couple years, our city buses have batteries on them. And I would like the city to invest in putting solar on the buses so that if there is an emergency, there's buses are deployed all around the city, or they could be deployed around the city, and they are charging stations for cell phones, mainly so we can communicate, and maybe for some other equipment, but you can get on a bus and go. Please, can someone talk to the city, because I'm not getting anywhere with this one, but yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'll second that. And not only that, but Corvallis is hardly, if we were to do that, Corvallis would hardly be, on the leading edge. The Hood River School District is doing this with electric school buses.
Oh, fantastic.
We were involved in that project, and Peter was too, actually. And I believe Beaverton is looking at it as well with electric school buses. So these buses have huge batteries, and electric buses are pretty darn common. Like if you go to London, I think half of their bus fleet now is electric. I mean, literally thousands of buses. So it's not, it's not like experimental technology. Yeah, so there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't do that.
Thank you, Cassandra. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Just a little more on that. There's an article in today's Oregonian just about that I was reading this morning. Beaverton has the largest electric bus fleet in the state. I think Oakland might have the largest one in the country. And there are bidirectional chargers. The integration's in its infancy. Hood River's been working for a few years probably, and they're not there at all to hook up their electric school bus with the stationary battery, with the solar system. But related to that is pickups or electric vehicles. There's more and more electric vehicles now. I got a Chevy pickup that's got a 200 kilowatt hour battery that the pickup cost me less than buying a battery that size. And there's 6 outlets on it. And if I get a power, I just run some extension cords and plug them into my device, refrigerator, whatever. But that's happening more and more, particularly as the chemistry of the battery changes to lithium iron phosphate that you could charge and discharge all day. And most car companies are going to that just because they're less expensive. So that's Hyundai has a little outlet, and there's bidirectional chargers on some solar inverters. Have them. Doesn't work for all cars, but it's definitely. I've always pushed the concept, and it's starting to come to fruition. You look at Australia, which is the world's leader in solar and batteries, and they're jumping big time into bidirectional chargers.
Thank you. Yes, Keith.
Brian's been trying to ask a question a long time, so I'll defer to Brian. Thank you. I know a lot of the storage batteries today rely on lithium technology, and I hear about iron flow cells and solid state. I wondered what do you guys feel about those types of technologies for home storage and for small buildings? Did ESS go out of business?
So I love it. It's great technology.
Repeat that.
Oh, sorry. So the question is about what's called flow batteries, particularly iron flow batteries. Oh boy, I'm not going to try to talk about the chemistry, but basically it's technology where the electrolyte, rather than being in a sort of fixed cell, if you will, is a liquid. And if you want to increase the size of the battery, you essentially just add more liquid. You add another storage tank. One of the leaders is a company called ESS Energy Storage Systems in Wilsonville. I believe Bill Gates invested in them. And we have wanted to put in one of their systems for a long time. Unfortunately, they have found that the scale that works is only large and getting larger. They are now out of our size range, basically, and the only ones who can buy their systems are either utilities or the military. They start at, I think they probably start at about $10 million or something like that, and they are in a 40-foot trailer. But it's great technology. The electrolyte is, instead of lithium, it's iron based, and you can start it on fire if you hold a lighter to it. Take the lighter away, it goes out. It's environmentally very friendly, non-toxic. If you spill it on the ground, you don't have a toxic spill. What you've got is a pile of rust. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Okay.
So I'm with a local church. We've got a solar system. We're thinking of doing a remodel to put in heat pumps, but we've got a gas furnace at this point that's in reasonably good shape. We're wondering and we need an emergency backup for the heat pump. If we leave the gas in, could we use the solar system and batteries to fire up the furnace if need be in an emergency situation? And what size of a battery system would you need to run, to ignite a gas furnace and keep the fan going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is yes. So you've got if everyone heard, a church has a solar and a gas furnace and wants to be able to add a battery, right? And use that to keep the furnace running, the fan, and the furnace running in a power outage. So it sounds like that's possible, but it's going to be very specific to your situation. And I'll let anyone else who wants weigh in.
I mean, that is the short answer, yeah.
And of course, the assumption is that there will be gas.
Right.
Yes, assuming there is gas, right?
All right. Other questions? Lynn?
So we are in the process of adding a battery to the abundant solar system that we have. And I'm wondering, is anyone talking about maybe some sort of database for homes that have batteries that your neighbors or other people could realize that they could come there and power something up?
I do not know of anything like that, but that is so interesting, and I'm so curious if folks would want people. I'm really curious when it comes down to it, how this is going to play out. Right? It's like the doors are shut, keep the lights down, or please come. And individuals will be really different. Do you know of anything being talked about like that?
Well, we have started, my husband and I live in the College Hill area, and another member of our neighborhood, another resident, and I have started a emergency preparedness effort in just a 2-block area. And one of the things that we're doing is finding out who has what and who is, who's going to need more help than somebody else. And we're really trying to do it at just a very small neighborhood level. And I really would encourage people to talk to their neighbors and start doing stuff. The state of Oregon Office of Emergency Management has a good program called Be 2 Weeks Ready, although I'm not sure how much that's going to difference it's going to make if we have the big one hit, but at least it's a start. And that would be the only thing I would have to say, is that it's a very individual thing whether you're going to want to let folks know that you've got solar and batteries, or you've got, rainwater catchment tanks with lots of water stored, or whatever. So start small. Yeah. Start with your own home and talk to your neighbors.
I'll just add, I maybe someone here knows, I think there are sort of neighborhood watch, neighborhood coordinators, like block recycling coordinators. I think there's the same thing in Corvallis for disaster preparedness. I know we have someone on our block who's kind of focused on that. I don't know if there's an official structure there, but no one else knows?
Well, I know that Sierra Anderson, who is the city's emergency management official, she is really trying to work with neighborhood associations. But there are a lot of areas of Corvallis that don't have a neighborhood association. So, it's really up to individuals to get together and do what they can and contact the Oregon Office of Emergency Management and ask for some copies. They are wanting to give away all this stuff that they have prepared. They're just not sure of the best way to get it out. So, it's there for the taking.
A city like Lincoln City has a certified emergency response team network.
CERT, yeah. Well, and we have that here in Corvallis too. Yeah. Julie?
I want to add to the question about the church. I know for a time, Oregon Department of Energy and Energy Trust were working to make sure there were cooling stations. And I think through nonprofits and already organized organizations like churches and schools and such, that you could access heat pumps. And I don't know if the program has sunset, but I am certain it will come back. So it's like keep your ears open to listen for that, especially in the nonprofit sector. And that it does mean that you have to provide, I think, 10 spaces for people to come in and cool on a hot, hot day. But otherwise, it can be just your normal business space or church space.
Questions? All right, Ken, you've been waiting patiently.
No one's talked about other ways to run generators. I know the answer of it.
Other ways to run generators other than
Gasoline.
through gasoline? I don't know. Yeah, Peter, use the microphone, please.
There's multi-fuel generators, propane, diesel, gasoline.
And so the nice thing
Mice.
about propane, it never gets old or gets stiff or anything. Propane will always start, gasoline goes bad and plugs up your system. So propane is very, very reliable.
One of the things that is also coming more mainstream is propane-powered fuel cell generators. And this can get you 3 to 6 times more capacity out of a single unit of propane, utilizing batteries and solar. So that is here.
When you have a generator and the proper solar setup, what typically happens is the generator can come on to charge up your batteries. If you get rainy day or your batteries are low or there's no sun, so a proper system could all work together. So you're not running your generator all the time.
Stuart, was your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to speak to this business of neighborhood associations. One of the things that we do, I live in a neighborhood association, and at one time we got together like a decade ago and we put up some money. We got a small grant from the city to buy a solar panel and a backup battery. And one of the things we had to do beforehand is decide how much of a backup battery, because batteries are very expensive. So how much you need. And so if you're thinking about doing this, think about exactly what it is you want, which is probably your cell phone, maybe your PC. One of the things I find out in emergency preparedness, if people can talk to one another, they can run their iPads, they can run their, the kids can run their electronic devices, which don't take a lot of electricity. It's important to maintaining their sanity, maintaining community of just doing that. So if you can, when the neighborhoods get together, it doesn't take much, but it does take some effort to get together and sort of keep these things going. But every year it gets a little bit more important.
Yes.
Can I add to that Chloe Stewart, who was very helpful to me, who works with Sierra, and she had mentioned that since taking over her job, she has yet, since coming on board a couple years ago, to actually work with any new forming neighborhood associations. And those of us who have trained to be emergency response technicians as well as radio technicians in Astoria, see possibilities yet to bear fruit here that are pieces that have been in place for quite a while. I don't hear anybody talking about microhydro as another source, and or geothermal possibilities. Anybody want to speak to those as well that are not fossil fuel?
Dan?
Yeah, so microhydro and geothermal. We would love to do them. They're not easy. That's the simple answer. We looked at, I don't want to give you the whole history. We looked at the Rock Creek watershed, right, where Corvallis gets, I don't know, a quarter of its water, I think. From
A third of our water.
Up on Mary's Peak. But it's just technically complicated and financially complicated. Geothermal is the same thing. It's coming. I think it's getting more common and simpler. There's some cool new technology, but I toured the geothermal power plant down in Lakeview, and they built it. And then after a couple of years, they realized that although they had tested the water, it was coming out much more corrosive than they thought, and the maintenance cost of replacing pipes and so on was much higher than they thought. So they're kind of unexpected issues. One really cool technology that I think is coming is it's actually comes out of fracking, right? So you drill not one but 2 wells for geothermal, right? And you have a generator at the top of one of them, and you essentially pressurize that. So you have a loop, right? And the cool thing is, not only do you get more power because you're forcing the heat out of the ground, but you can cap it, right? So you got this pressurized source, and then when you want to uncap it, you got the generator running when you want it on demand, so it's like a battery. And that's pretty cool. So that could integrate with solar. You know, solar, obviously, the challenge to solar is what they call intermittency, right? It only operates during the daytime. So yeah, so there's some interesting stuff coming, but it's not simple. We're the Oregon Clean Power Co-op rather than the Oregon Solar Co-op because we wanted to do micro hydro and geothermal and small wind, and in more than a decade we have not been able to do a single project. So take that for for what it's worth.
I know that Safe Haven has a geothermal system along with a very nice solar system, but and it's a shallow system. It just picks up heat from the earth rather than in wells. It's like maybe 5-6 feet deep or something, and they put it in 14, 15 years ago, from what I remember. But I don't know how that's working, but that's.
I know Ashland played around with that a bit a while ago.
So I have a question for Dan. The slide that you showed that showed I think it was a microgrid, and you said PGE did it in Salem. So that was something that PGE initiated, or was it in conjunction with the city of Salem? What was the process? How did that come about? Why don't we have that here? I guess is my question. Would it be Pacific Power or the city of Corvallis that would have to initiate it?
Yeah, no, it was PGE. It's at least 10 years old. I don't know if they're still giving tours, but it's very cool. You can go in there and you can like, you know, they'll let you hit the button and disconnect the whole thing from the grid, and you watch the batteries start to, you know, and then you hit another button and the batteries start to charge again. I think it was expensive. Certainly at the time, you know, 10 or more years ago, it was very expensive and cutting edge technology, and they got a federal grant to do it. But PGE is, in my estimation, PGE is ahead of Pacific Power. They're more innovative in this regard. They have a number of interesting battery pilots of various sorts. They're putting in large amounts of batteries at a couple of electric substations. They have I think they call it the battery pilot, where they're actually paying at least part of the cost of giving batteries to homeowners, and then PGE is able to call on those when they need them. Pacific Power is coming along, but they're not as innovative or as far along. You know, but have to give a shout out. So Pacific Power did actually fund the battery at the South Co-op. So they are doing some things.
I have a question in that regard. So we know that the batteries will help us in a resiliency situation. What happens with my billing? Is there a way to maximize the fact that I have batteries? Do I get to sell my energy back, or do I get to let the utility use my batteries when there's really high use, or is there something that can maximize my bill?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it, and then Peter can add his. So it is definitely coming. And you know, there are various ways of leveraging the financial benefits of batteries. So one is shifting the time, right, of when you're putting the power back on the grid. Another is reducing peak demand. So the utilities, not for residential, but commercial buildings, utilities don't just give you one bill. If you look at a commercial, like if you have a church, right, you look at the electric bill, it's enormously complicated because they're both charging you for the electricity and what they call the demand or the peak, right? So that's what batteries can reduce and lower your overall bill. And, you know, the grid has become enormously more complicated, particularly with things like Peter was talking about, you know, EVs, bidirectional charging in EVs. And you can be sure that somewhere in the world there are a bunch of 20-somethings who are sitting at their computers figuring out how to do the app to allow us to trade power with our neighbors and our friends down the street, and the utility and benefit financially. So it's definitely coming.
You mentioned Australia a minute ago. I just read an article the other day that said that everybody in the country in Australia now gets 3 hours of free power every afternoon because everybody's feeding so much into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, probably the best YouTube channel to watch is the Electric Viking. It's a
Electric Viking?
Electric Viking. It's a guy in Australia who's Scandinavian, and he has about 7,000 videos on YouTube on everything about electric vehicles, solar, batteries, and they're like 5-10 minutes, and they're excellent. And he just talks about what's going on all over the world. But as dire as things might seem, sometimes you look at Norway, and they turn off their grid once a year, and they have microgrids powering the whole country, and they're 96% of the new vehicle sales are electric, and China's over 50%. The new vehicle sales are electric, and battery prices keep coming down, and Ford's making the next generation of lithium, changing the anode, and a lot of things are happening in electric vehicles and batteries and solar. I mean, a lot of solar is going in all over Pakistan, Africa, Haiti, you name it. So, all this is happening in spite of some people in DC,
And also in terms of leveraging a battery, time of use or peak demand is something that's coming to a residence near you. Consumer Power has already implemented that in 2028, that time of use rates will be in effect. And how they're going to go about those time frames, for example, it's really typically at evening hours between 4 and 8, 5 and 9 p.m. This is commonplace in California. And a lot of the residential systems that are designed are for these applications. So it's quite effective in that regard. But those changes are coming.
Let me just add a little bit to that. If you're unfortunate or fortunate to live in Consumers Power, they changed May 1st, I think. And net metering with solar, the utility is your bank. You make power over the course of a year, which happens to be March to March. And if you're making excess in July, it rolls over the next month, keeps rolling over. A lot of the public utilities, Consumer Power, Salem Electric, and many others, they don't have that anymore. They pay if you make excess in July, they'll give you the avoided cost of like 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's much, much harder to make economics, solar in some public utilities, though they do have cheaper rates. In Pacific Power, I used to think that time of day rates were, a pain up until I started using more energy than what my small solar system, because I got trees on both sides, is producing. But basically, Pacific Power's residentially is about 15.5 cents, and their time of use rates, it's 10 cents for all hours except 5 to 9 p.m. So just put a timer on your water heater, don't charge your electric vehicle then, and you could basically save money. But the utilities want to, they want to do time of use rates. But if you're producing all your power with solar, it doesn't really make sense to go to time of use rates.
All right. Christine.
I have a question about the lifespan of the batteries and such. Another question asker said that their solar panels are 16 years old and going well. Another person said that their battery is 16 years old and it's failing. Is that typical, and what can one do to maximize the lifespan of the battery?
So conventional solar panels will last 25 plus years at minimum. With different types of battery chemistry, you have different lifespans. For example, lead acid batteries, which were the convention a number of years ago, you would be lucky to get 5 to 7 years out of them. In off-grid applications, probably less. With lithium ion phosphate batteries, they are all warranted for a minimum of 10 years, pretty much all manufacturers at this point, and have a life expectancy of about 15.
Just a quick note, CATL, which is the largest battery manufacturer in the world, Chinese, of course, they're guaranteeing some batteries for 1 million miles. And then their next generation sulfur batteries, 3 times that. So, it's not, batteries lasting a lot longer. And it's not like they die. It's just that they're not putting out enough, and so they'll actually repurpose those and for stationary use where, you know, you can do with a little bit lower capacity.
Lynn?
We're thinking about getting an EV one day, maybe. And one thing that I don't like is the lithium mining and whatnot. Can that be recycled? Can these batteries be recycled somehow?
Can lithium batteries be recycled?
What happens to the lithium?
So question is, can lithium batteries be recycled? I don't know, but what I do know is I ran into a company out of BC, out of Canada, that has a contract with, I believe, Mercedes to take their used EV batteries and use them, as Peter was mentioning, for stationary, putting them into solar arrays. We looked at the numbers. They weren't cheap enough from our perspective to warrant buying used batteries, but there's certainly other uses for them.
I've heard that in China, if your car battery's running down, you take it to the dealer and they just switch it out with another battery.
I was in China 2 weeks ago, and
Peter, can you use the microphone, please?
I was in China about 2-3 weeks ago, and over half of their new vehicle sales, whether it's trucks, cars, whatever, are electric. And there's certain companies that can swap batteries. Israel actually was one of the first places to do that. Company folded years ago, but I don't know if it's Geely Motors, but yeah, there's definitely ones. But they're also making very high voltage charging systems, and they got batteries that are charged in 6-7 minutes to 80% in China. So you know, it doesn't really make sense almost to swap them and to do all that, but they're way ahead of us in battery technology. And
Any other questions? And are there any people who didn't want to speak up but wrote their question down on a card? If you have a card, Julie or Susan will collect it. No? Okay. All right. Ken, did you have another question?
So with the EVs, they have a certain warranty on the battery. So after so many years and so much, where the dealership can replace them, but you have to be very specifically within that time to get that to happen.
most are like 100,000 miles.
Right.
But they're lasting a lot longer than that typically.
Okay, anyone else? If not, then let's thank our panelists. Thank you. And we hope that you will stay and maybe talk to them one-on-one. And also, we'd love to have a few people come stay and help us put the chairs away. Thank you.
Maybe before you do anything on this.
Thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate your being here.